Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am excited to share the recording of my session from the Persian Power BI and Fabric Conference 2025. In this session, I dived into the pros and cons of DirectLake and shared my unfiltered opinion about DirectLake. Let's jump right in. Organizers including Wahid, Omid, Matt and Danielle, you have made this awesome experience happening for us. Okay, so let me just bring up my slides and perhaps without any further ado, I should start. Okay, so today's session is about DirectLake and I'm providing my unfiltered opinion about DirectLake and providing enough information for the people who do not know what DirectLake is or they are not sure if it is the right storage model to start with. And I'll try to give you enough information to go and dig deeper and understand the technology a little bit better. My name is Sohail Bakhshi. I am director of Data Visioner. Data Visioner is my startup. We build products over Power BI, and our main focus is on Power BI governance. And the current tool that we have in the market is Power BI Documenter. If you would like to know more about it, just head to my website and you can find more information about it. I'm also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I'm a consultant, author. I've authored a couple of books, 4 books in my lifetime. 3 of them are about data and Power BI. I'm a blogger and speaker, and I'm more than happy for you to follow me on my social media that you can see on the page. Okay, so tonight's session is about large data models. Let's see what large data models are and what large data sources are and how large is actually large and what do we mean by large data sources. And here I am making a distinction between data sources and data models. Right now, I am talking about the data sources that we usually connect to from a Power BI to these data sources or from Microsoft Fabric or any other data platforms, okay? Okay, so let's talk about some generic characteristics of large data sources. When we talk about large data sources, it's not just about the size of the data source. Obviously, size is one important measure, but it is not everything. The other thing is about the velocity. How long does it take to transform data from location A to location B? How fast it is. And the other one is complexity. How complex is our data source? And let me give you some examples about large data source and what do these things mean in terms of size, velocity, and complexity. Imagine a web analytics, just like Google Analytics. We have millions of interactions per minute. Digesting all that data and turning it into information, which is the facade of every data platform, right? So all the data engineers and data modelers and report writers, they're all working together to turn the data into valuable information so the businesses can make data-driven based decisions. Okay. For velocity, I can think of an IoT sensors. IoT sensors, as you can imagine, you may have a farm or a land with hundreds or even thousands of sensors around the farm. Just imagine there are some sensors that gauge the humidity or even capture some soil characteristics, and they are sending logs per minutes. This data should be transferred to the cloud as quick as possible, right? When we talk about real time, it's more about near real time. In a couple of seconds, you want to be able to analyze that data and see it in the output, right? In the data visualization, you need to have some information about it. So the data itself, the raw data, doesn't really help. So fast data movement, again, from point A to point B is a good example of velocity. And the complexity. Think about finance and banking. You may have millions of transactions on a daily basis, while every second of a day and every cent of money matters that we are wiring, right? So if we lose 5 minutes, how many $1 million that can be, or thousands of dollars that can be actually millions of dollars. So that is another characteristic of large data source. So whenever we are thinking about working with data sources, we have to think about their size, the velocity, and complexity. One point that I always tell to my fellow consultants is that as a consultant, it's our role to understand the data and the requirements as much as possible and as best to our ability as possible, right? So one of the questions that we should always ask is about what type of data source or data sources are we talking about? The size of the data source, velocity, right? Is something like real-time data analysis, is it a requirement? Is it a must, or near real-time is okay? And always we have to get the definition of the customers about real-time. We had numerous amounts of times that this has happened to us, and the customer says, actually, I'm after real-time data analytics. And your brain quickly goes to, do you have sensors or IoT or something like that? They say, no, I'm talking about 15 minutes. 15 minutes is not even near real time, right? It is definitely not real time. So getting all of those information before digging into the build and starting building your model in whatever or your data solution in whatever ecosystem that you are working is a must. And then the complexity. Never understate the complexity of a data source. Okay, now let's move forward and get a better understanding of data analytics processes. So in data analytics processes, data analytics platforms and ecosystems, we always have multiple source systems, right? So we have text files, databases, spreadsheets, Excel files, sensors, IoT sensors, file system, and cloud sources. We usually use ETL or ELT, which stands for extract, transformation, and load, or extract, load, and transformation, to centralize that data into a central location, into a storage, right? Wouldn't it be easier to work with the entire data when it sits in a centralized location instead of just connecting to multiple different sources, and every single source definitely has its own credentials, and you face a whole lot of different issues with that? Wouldn't it be better? It's definitely better. So that's why we adopt ETL or ELT, depending on this architecture and scenario that we are working on, to centralize all the source data into a single centralized storage. And then we again do some ETL or ELT work to create a warehouse, a data warehouse, or a lakehouse. So the data warehouse or lakehouse um, keeps the historical data. In the case of a lakehouse, you may have semi structured or non-structured data also loaded into the lakehouse. But it is not the case for the warehouse, and that is one of the biggest differences between these two. But depending on the architecture, we may have either of those. And then in the next step, we usually process that data into semantic layers. Semantic layers are usually do not keep the history of data, right? So they are definitely different from the warehouse, and the use cases are different. We process the data that is already optimized for analytics and reporting purposes in our warehouse, but we do not take the entire data into a semantic layer. We usually take just a proportion of data for a duration of time into a semantic layer. Besides, we add some pre-aggregations. So we'll think about dimensions and facts and aggregate those dimensions and facts into a higher granularity instead of storing everything into the lowest grain, right? And then we visualize that data using some visualization tools. In this case, Power BI. I put Power BI in here, and I'm referring to the report writing experience of Power BI only, because Power BI itself, when we create a Power BI solution, it creates a semantic model which resembles a semantic layer of a data and analytics process. You may use Tableau, you may use Excel, or any other data visualization tools. But a data analytics platform and process doesn't stop there. You usually have machine learning use cases and machine learning models. Machine learning models usually source from the raw data from the centralized storage. They can source from the lakehouse and warehouse. And in rare cases, you may want to get some data from semantic layer, right? The other part is the AI, artificial intelligence side of thing. Artificial intelligence can source data from either centralized storage, from lakehouse and warehouse, from your semantic layer, or even from your data visualization to help us with to visualize the data in a better format, right? So the entire thing, if you think about it, is a data and analytics platform with a lot of processes in between. But remember, when we talk about, and I'm just again touching on the velocity side of things. When we talk about uh, sensors and near real time, then near real time analytics comes in play, and we have to have the ability to visualize it as quick as possible, right? So here the use case is different. Just think about it. You have sensors, and you can land that sensor into the data, the logs of the sensors into a centralized storage and go through all the warehousing and semantic layer stuff. But it would not be even near real time, right? Because you are going from source to all of those processes and then to land into a report. So real-time analytics is another type of technology that helps us in a data platform process. All of these concepts matter. You will see why and how they stitch together when we talk about DirectLake and semantic model and storage mods, right? Okay, now let's look at Microsoft Fabric, right? So Microsoft Fabric is a unified data analytics platform. So whatever we saw in the previous slide, they are already in here, right? So we have OneLake. OneLake is our centralized storage. We have one security, and one security can is beyond the previous slides. It can be network security. It can be we can apply governance and many other things. And universal compute capacities. When we get Fabric capacities, we have a universal compute over the entire capacity. Shared workspaces in Microsoft Fabric, which is built based on the Power BI experience. We have workspaces that we can store our items and data. And it's working on the foundation of OneLake, which is our unified storage layer, right? And we have AI Assistant or Copilot on Microsoft Fabric. And from all of those experiences on top, data engineering, data integration, data engineering, data warehousing, real-time analytics, data science, so on and so forth, this specific topic that we are talking about is more related to business intelligence and Power BI per se. Now, let's see how does Power BI fits in, right? So again, Power BI is a part of Microsoft Fabric platform. Again, we have a couple of data sources, and in terms of Microsoft Fabric, we usually use a Power Query, and Power Query uses ETL for data transformation. And we store the data into our data model, and then we visualize the data into the reports, right? The data model is now I'm just narrowing down, going down to the funnel. The data model from the entire Power BI experience or business intelligence experience is the topic of this session, right? So a data model in Power BI defines how the data is structured, related, and how it is processed and how it is stored in Power BI. The storage is important here, and we will get to it in a couple of minutes. It follows relational data modeling approach, and it uses Vertipack technology for in-memory data processing. A data model from Power BI perspective includes tables that can have facts and dimensions. It includes relationships that could be one to many, could be many to many. We have measures, we create calculations in DAX. We have aggregations to pre-summarize the data to gain more performance. And remember that it's always the case, regardless of how we collect the data and store the data. A well-designed data model will improve the performance and reduce the resource consumption. Next is the storage mods in Power BI. So now from the entire data modeling in Power BI, we are narrowing down to storage mods in Power BI and what we have on hand. Okay, so We have a couple of data sources. Now we import that data into the data model, and then we visualize it, right? So I've showed it a couple of times so far, but that is not the only option here in Power BI. We have DirectQuery as well, which is only available on databases or cloud sources, such as OData. Everything that basically that Power Query can generate an underlying query in the native language that the data source supports and sends it back to the data source and grabs the results back from the data source, and it shows the results in the visualization layer. That is direct query. So something like Excel or CSV or text, they do not support direct query mode, right? And now, next one is in the data model, we have tables, right? And these tables, at the level of table, we also have storage mode, right? So every single table, if it is in import mode, then our data model, the storage mode of the entire model is called import mode. In contrast, if these tables, every single one of these tables is in direct query mode and is just sending queries concurrently to the source system, right? And grabs the results and then brings it into the data model. If all of them are in direct query mode, then we have the entire data model is in direct query mode. And now, what if we have some tables that are in direct query mode and some of them are in import mode? This is also supported in Power BI, right? So the connection is a mixed mode. So it is a mix of direct query and import mode. The storage model for the data model is now called composite model, right? So composite model is a combination, it is a data model that has a combination of direct query and import mode at the table level, right? Uh, we can dig deeper. It is actually at the partition level. So every table can have multiple partitions. At the partition level, you may have and you may have direct query or import, and that is called hybrid table if you have both in a single table, right? So next is the topic of tonight, which is DirectLake in Microsoft Fabric, right? And we will get back to it later. DirectLake is only available in Microsoft Fabric. Again, we have our source system, but this time we ingest the source system into our centralized location, which is OneLake, right? And then we create delta tables, either on Lakehouse or Warehouse Experience in Microsoft Fabric. Then we are able to create a DirectLake connection to the Lakehouse or Warehouse from our semantic model from the business intelligence experience of Microsoft Fabric, which is what? Which is Power BI, right? And all of these tables are connected to the source system in DirectLake mod. And when I say the source system, I am talking about the source for the semantic model. Just look at this diagram a little bit closer. You understand that the source of my semantic model is either a lakehouse or a warehouse that sits within my fabric capacity, right? Okay, let's take one step further. A direct lake in Microsoft Fabric can have, well, a semantic model in Microsoft Fabric can connect to a lakehouse or a warehouse in DirectQuery mode. And all tables are in DirectQuery mode, right? So when we go with DirectQuery mode, we have the real-time capabilities with the source, which is our lakehouse or warehouse. So do not make a mistake. This real time to the source is our lakehouse or warehouse within the fabric. We are not talking about the source system, which can be IoT sensors, right? We also another benefit of DirectQuery mod in even in Microsoft Fabric is reduced memory usage because the data is queried from the source, again from the lakehouse or warehouse. Simplified data management, no need to scheduling refresh, so DirectQuery doesn't require any refreshing mechanisms or scheduling any refreshes, and could go beyond the storage limits because the data is not stored in the data model, right? However, the data is stale. The data staleness means that the imported data is not up to date, right? Because we are in DirectQuery. Memory intensive. Vertipack, it can be very memory intensive because it sends all the queries back to my data lake and warehouse. Refresh time. I think I made a mistake on this slide. These are actually from the import mod, not DirectQuery mod. So sorry about that. But size limitation and memory limitations, all of those apply to the import mod, not DirectQuery mod. I just mixed up in this slide. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at the import mod. Hopefully I didn't make the same mistake in this slide. So it is faster query performance. Look, by all means, DirectLake is not going to be faster than import mod. And we will get to it later today. Right? Rich data transformation. The data transformation that we get in import mod is much better than data transformation that we get on DirectQuery mod. Highly compressed data is highly compressed because it is using Vertipack engine, and less storage is required when the data is more compressed, and the performance will be better. Offline access. When we import the data into the data model, we can run the reports without requiring access to the data source, right? However, it could be slow, especially for complex queries and large data sources, right? So, okay, so here's the thing. I think yes, query limitations and timeout and throttling. Unfortunately, I mixed these two slides together. So for pros and cons, I put the cons of DirectQuery into the import mod and import mod into DirectQuery. Sorry about that, but these things happen. Okay, so query limitations, timeout throttling, and these are the cons of DirectQuery. Limited support for transformations, again for DirectQuery, not for import mod, right? And potential costs in large data sources, again for DirectQuery, not for import mod. And here's the thing. Let's think about it. We have a DirectQuery semantic model, and it is connected to a SQL Azure SQL database, and we are having more than 50 concurrent users, 50, right? And all of them are sending concurrent queries because they are using different reports to the same Azure SQL database box, right? So it puts a lot of strain and pressure onto our Azure SQL box, and we perhaps will require to upgrade to the higher scale in our Azure SQL database. So it will incur even more cost. And now let's talk about some facts about DirectLake. DirectLake is not available for everyone, right? So Power BI Pro and Premium users, unfortunately, are out of the game. We definitely require a Microsoft Fabric F capacity, and Lakehouse is not available on Power BI Pro or PPU environments. As of yet, it is not available for PPU either. And why? Because PPU and Power BI Pro only support DirectQuery and import mod, and DirectLake makes sense for organizations with capacities in higher tiers, 32 F32 or higher, and we will get to it later in today's session. Non-OneLake data sources are not supported, and we are talking about SQL Server, Dataverse, Snowflake, Excel, etc. DirectQuery works only with OneLake data sources, right? So remember, we are talking about Delta Parquet format, which is our Lakehouse or warehouse experience in Microsoft Fabric. And the reason for that is that DirectLake reads data directly from Lakehouse or warehouse, right? As I mentioned earlier. And connecting directly to these sources require DirectQuery or import mod, as DirectLake does not support composite models. So again, composite models is not supported. And we also are limited to only one data source, right? So if we have multiple data sources, it is not supported in OneLake either. When using calculated tables or calculated columns, unfortunately, OneLake only supports measures, and it does not support calculated columns or calculated tables. So automatically, calculation groups are out of the game, right? Calculation tables and calculation columns require full data set processing, which conflicts with DirectLake real-time approach with its data source, which is Lakehouse or warehouse. And there is a workaround, however. Instead of creating calculated columns and calculated tables within your semantic model, we can create those tables in our source system, in our Lakehouse or warehouse. When row-level security is required, again, DirectLake is not does not support it, or it falls back to DirectQuery. It is you may have already seen here and there that people say that DirectLake contains best of both worlds of DirectQuery and import mod, because DirectLake also imports the data into memory, so it gives us blazing fast performance, and it also gives us the real-time capability of DirectQuery. But remember, the real-time capability is again against our data lake and data warehouse, right? And up next is that DirectLake is not recommended, as I mentioned earlier, for capacities below F32 capacity. It's interesting concept because DirectLake is actually available on all capacities. including an F2 capacity. But it is not recommended to use on capacities smaller than F32. The reason is very simple. There are higher limitations of the resource availability on smaller capacities. I took a screenshot of a Microsoft Learn website, which shows us the availabilities of resources based on the capacities. If we look at an F32 capacity, just look at that one. At the F32 capacity, we get 10 gigabytes of RAM of memory, which is not a lot, right? And we also have row limitations of 300 million rows per table, right? And it is on this one. And the biggest constraint is on the model size of available on OneLake, which in smaller capacities, you can see that it is 20 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes, 10 gigabytes, and 10 gigabytes, and memory, available memory. 3 gigabytes of memory is very, very small, right? So if you want to try and learn, DirectLake and learn it, definitely go for it and use smaller capacities. But if you want to productionize it, to implement it for production, it is not really recommended to go with capacities smaller than 32. And 32 is actually the edge, the absolute edge that you can think about productionization. And let me move forward. Okay, so memory constraints in efficient query performance, because the memory limitations is not the only one, right? Remember, the memory, the max memory that you see on the screen is available to the entire capacity for all users, for all items. If you have lakehouses, warehouses, notebooks, machine learning models, semantic models, reports, for everything that runs in a capacity, that is the memory limit. And there are some other resource limits. So data volume limits. Again, data volume limitation is another one. Concurrency is actually something that a lot of organizations do not think about beforehand. And concurrency refers to when concurrent users are using the same report or your ecosystem, right? Let's say I build a semantic model and it is serving 100 users. These 100 users are hitting the capacity every single time that they open a report page or they click on a visual to set some filters, especially when we are talking about DirectLake, because DirectLake does not import the entire data, just like how the import mod works. The import mod takes a copy of the entire data and puts it into memory, regardless of the end users. If they use it, they use it. If they don't, it is there and it is consuming memory. While DirectLake is sort of works on request base, right? So the first person who runs a report, it would be a little bit slower, and it goes behind the scenes and runs queries and grab the results and visualize it for us. But from that point onwards, the queries and the reports would be blazing fast because everything is in memory, unless you hit this memory limit. unless you hit the per table limit, which is 300 million rows for all capacities below F64, right? So those are very important things to note. And last but not least, learn about the limitations and constraints of DirectLake before productionizing it. I put the QR code to this page. There are a whole lot of different considerations and limitations that I have already talked about, and but not all of them. I didn't talk about everything that you can see in this page. Something like what if analysis, what if analysis in Power BI, or field parameters. Those are some of the really useful features in Power BI. But if you want to use DirectLake, you do not have those options. With that, I think I moved on pretty fast. I am sort of a little bit early. Are there any questions?
First of all, thank you so much, Suhail. It was a great presentation, same as always. Your presentation always telling the story in the best way. You just need to follow that and you will understand everything. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Matthew.
Thank you very much. You know, I made a mistake. I messed up with with the pages with
That's totally
DirectQuery
fine.
mod
That
and
that's happened for
import mod,
everyone.
but
But that was clear.
hopefully the audience are, yeah.
Yeah, that was totally clear. There are some questions here, so I will read them, and I know you need to drop in 7 or 10 minutes. Just let me know if some of them need more answer. We can have another session in Persian Power User Group and go through them. Otherwise, it's up to you. So the first question is, Mehdad asked that, can the direct lake connect to a OneLake in another tenant of the same organization?
So I have not tested it, Meredith. I have not tested this, and I don't know the answer straight away. But you know, unfortunately, this is still we are trying to be interactive, but I cannot have Mehdad to explain the use case, right? So why an organization must have, well, there are a lot of organizations that have multiple capacities. They may have some capacities for development and testing, and an entire capacity for production. But at least I don't know any organizations who have multiple production capacities that you really need to connect from a OneLake to another using DirectLake. But that is an interesting scenario.
Yeah. Okay. So the other question is, that's a question from Sahar. She asked, could you share some reference on when Direct Lake falls back to Direct Query?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me. Well, actually, I have to just Google it. I have to Google it, but there are some scenarios when DirectLake definitely uh, falls back into direct query mode, and one of them is if we have used views, or the other one is when it hits RLS, rollable security. It's not a limitation on RLS, but the other one is when it exceeds the capacity limits, right? Or what else? Yeah, those are the top ones that I can think about. But yeah.
That's great. That's good. Thank you so much, mate. So the method ask another question, and that's, does direct leg work with shortcuts in the Lakehouse as the data is not physically loaded to the Fabric Lakehouse?
As much as I know, they don't. It must be within the Lakehouse itself, because it goes into the Delta Parquet files, Delta Parquet format. If we do not have Delta Parquet available, then DirectLake cannot have it.
And last question, I believe, is from Mesam, and he asked about what is the best way for performance import direct query. I think the question is about how to select the import is the best solution or direct query is the best solution. Because in terms of
Okay, so
performance, are different.
uh, uh, I suppose uh, I suppose that Maysam is actually a Power BI user, and they have, or maybe Maysam has smaller capacities that DirectLake doesn't really make too much sense. But look, if you are importing the data, when we talk about performance, always import mod is more performant than DirectQuery. DirectQuery sends queries directly back to the source system in case of Power BI, not in case of DirectLake or in Microsoft Fabric and the Lakehouse, right? It always sends the query back to the source system and gets the results back and then visualize it. It definitely caches the data, but the cache size is very, very, very small, right? So you will not get the best performance if you are working with large data sources, or your data source tables are very wide. We have seen some examples that a table had more than 1,200 columns. 1,200 columns. Just think
Super
about it.
fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So even the first step, Power Query just chokes, right? Because it cannot get the entire metadata sorted, right? So for import mod, my recommendation is always follow best practices on your data modeling, on be careful about the data types and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think that
A
was
lot of thank yous.
yeah, a lot of thank yous. I'm just adding them one by one to the screen, but many of them. So I just added the recent one. That was great, Sohail. That was a great one. I was curious to ask this question about that startup you are running there,
Mhm.
because me me and you talk about that many times, and I'm totally aware of that. But just if you can, because we have 4 or 5 minutes, just want to have this chance to tell us a little bit about that. What is that the visualization that I forgot the exact name. Data. What was that? The
Well,
name of
well,
the startup?
my startup, the name of the startup is Data Visioner with a
Visioner.
Z. If I can share my screen
Yeah,
for a
let me add
second,
your screen again to the page. Yeah, go
I
ahead, mate.
can bring it up. I have nothing loaded now, but I can add something over here. There you go. So it is called Data Visioner, and we are working on a governance data platform, governance platform for Power BI. We are working really hard to support Power BI service, which will be out in the next couple of months. So, and this is automating the documentation. Power BI Documenter is the name of a tool that we have right now. It has a couple of tiers. You can use it for free. You can go for a 1 week trial, or you can just go for pro, or we have enterprise licenses as well, which will customize the features for the enterprises. We lately added an AI feature that generates descriptions for DAX expressions, for Power Query expressions, for different personas. So not everybody is a DAX expert to understand uh, uh, functions. So we thought about different personas like a business analyst or a developer and so on and so forth. Well, thank you very much, Vahid, for this opportunity for me to present a little bit about Data Visioner and Power BI Documenter. But yeah, as I mentioned, we will support um, Power BI service on Microsoft Fabric regardless
Mm.
of your license. So even if you do not have Fabric capacity licenses, you only have Pro license or PPU license. Um, we have that option that you can directly connect from our platform to Fabric, and we see all the workspaces that you have access to. If you don't have access to some workspaces, we are not going to show them. Okay.
That's really good. That's really great. I send a link in the chat, so you can go ahead and use that one. I think they can use it for free for a few run or some few minutes, few hours. I don't know how you
No,
gave
the
that free.
free, it's we have a free tier that you can use the, for lifetime. You can use it for free, but it has
Okay.
I have
some
used
restrictions.
it.
Yeah, it has some restrictions because some of these, to provide a free account or free user to the end users, we are paying for the users, for those users, but it's not really a big amount of money. But Power BI Documenter is not our only tool. We have Power BI Exporter as well. Power BI Exporter is an external tool that you can install on Power BI desktop, and it exports the Power BI your semantic models data into CSV, and it gives you a zip file, right? So basically, and it is free. It is completely free. We also support Azure Analysis Services and on-prem analysis services, tabular models.
That's really great. That's a powerful tool. So yeah, so the link is in the chat. You can go ahead and use that one. And if you have any feedback, any comment, any question, you can reach out to Suhail. And I don't know, I'm just talking about reaching out to you on your behalf. So stop me.
No, it's absolutely all right. I'm more than happy to connect with more people, I'm a community guy, right? So
That's good.
community
Thank you.
rocks. Thank you very much for having me tonight, and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Yeah, thank you so much. We
Thank
have
you.
David here as well. So thank you, Sohail, and see you soon, mate.
Yeah, cheers. Bye
Thank
bye.
you, Sohail.
Yeah.
Take care.